So this is I decided to pull because it was such a fucking slow news day with not a lot of really big juicy stories. So I thought I'd pull some kind of just like cringy ass bullshit that people have, written or posted or said. So this is a sign that lets you know about your privilege and shit. Your vacation is possible because of the violent removal of indigenous people. Your streets are here because of the violent removal of indigenous people. The comforts you enjoy living here are at the price of indigenous lives, indigenous land, and centuries of violence against black and brown people. My problem with this is it kind of just makes me, if I was to just accept all that at face value, which to some extent I think you have to.
Sure.
But that just makes me like, I care more about my vacation than I do about the violent removal of indigenous people fucking 300 years ago or whatever.
Well, I mean...
And everyone does.
Right.
Like, people care more about the stupid little minutia of their own lives than they care about giant events happening in other countries. Even if they pretend otherwise, that's human fucking nature.
I honestly don't disagree with the sentiment of this, but...
I disagree with the emotion it's trying to make me feel.
Well,
because I don't feel it. Whatever. I mean...
Well, here's what it bothers me about it, and I think I know why you may not feel it.
Yeah.
Because it's an attempt to reduce what is such a fucking huge, overarching problem and reduce it to this one liberal issue. And claim that the only thing that your vacation is possible because of is this. When the fucking... Me and Scotty were talking about the vampire squid earlier. Just this overarching accumulation of wealth at the top of society and the eventual just removal of the day-to-day fucking necessities from the populace to the point where they rise up and overthrow the government and then... or die trying, because that's happened too.
Of course.
That cycle is the problem, not this one fucking way of looking at it. Yes, the removal of indigenous people for the comforts of another fucking group of people is part of a giant problem, a hyper-exploitative, crony capitalist, oligarchical nightmare that it's not even like a wild political theory that I'm giving you. This is the actual truth.
Yes.
We live in a world where the people at the very fucking top of society hoard their money and have all the power. That's the problem. Not just the removal of the indigenous.
Not only that, but I mean,
dude, it's the same thing.
I mean, you can study the history of humanity fucking all the way back to the beginning, and there's always been squabbles over land and resources. I'm not gonna fucking sit here and apologize because my ancestors beat your ancestors,
and it might be a cycle
and won the fucking land.
It might be a cycle that we can't even fucking break if we tried. I mean, Scotty brought up the fucking French Revolution in our conversation earlier, and how it eventually got so bad on the streets that people rose up and snipped some heads.
Well, they felt like they had nothing left to lose at that point.
But then they got Napoleon. So it's like they elevated another despot right to the fucking top of the heap, and it just happened again.
I always think the best analogy for that is just the fact that the dude who invented the guillotine was executed with the guillotine.
Oh, one of the main proponents.
Sure.
One of the main proponents of the revolution, Robespierre, is a French name, so I might be butchering that. He fucking was executed as well during the French Revolution.
And I mean, look,
everybody getting executed.
Things are complex.
Somehow the
now.
Marquis de Sade survived.
See, things are really complicated
he was
now,
French.
though. Like, you got to understand. You may look at that and go like, oh my God, what an awful thing that happened. And I really am not a proponent of political violence. I talk some crazy shit sometimes, but I don't like violence in any of its many forms.
Sure.
And I never really advocate for it.
I agree with you.
But here's the thing. We don't even have that option now. Like, think about it. The French Revolution, I mean, look, of course the rich had the ability to hire private security and they had the control of the armies
military,
and all of that shit.
Police,
so,
whatever.
But think about the difference in weaponry and shit and the difference in the level of surveillance that was possible. I mean, they did have the element of surprise on their hands, the ability to blend into the crowd and do these kind of hit and run things that they did. That option is off the fucking table for us now. We're so fucking watched. We're so listened to that any attempt to use the currently existing network that we have to communicate with one another to even fucking plan a mass uprising of that type would be immediately squashed.
I mean, the only way it could happen is if a bunch of people, like kind of like you see in Hong Kong, just got together like in huge, vast fucking numbers, hundreds of thousands or millions of people, and we're just like demanding change and with a certain point when there's too many people, the military's not
because there's really no difference other than that, as I see it. They still have the military. And I love people that try and make the argument that our boys would never fire at anybody on American soil. Hey, dipshit, they already have a bunch of fucking times the military's been called in to quell race riots and shot people in the fucking streets.
Yeah,
so
they're
I
not
tell you
neutral.
what. Let me tell you what, dude. I don't want to.
It's happened plenty of times.
I
They're
talk
on
a
the,
lot
they're
of-
on the side of who's buttering the bread. You know,
I talk a lot
Exactly.
of bullshit about military stuff, but I got to be honest with you. I have a baseline respect for people who put their fucking life on the line for that shit because I wouldn't.
Sure.
Not just for the reason that I'm a coward. I have political fucking ideas and life philosophy that precludes me shooting another fucking human being for political purposes.
Granted, yeah.
So I'm a conscientious objector from that end. But I'm also a fucking coward. I don't want to have to strap a gun to my fucking back and have that be my way of life.
And a lot of people don't.
And people, look, say what you want about the current system. People got to do that. But that being fucking said... I don't even fucking know, dude. I don't want to get in trouble with military people.
Let me say this to you. Let me say this to you. This whole map is fucking. If you look at this here, this message, it's fucking divide and conquer. It's black and brown versus white people. So now it's like you're white, so now you're against these people and it happens a lot of older people, especially. It's like. These people of color, and they're trying to say all this stuff. They're trying to say white people are the devil. We're good.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with us. So they're defending their identity. You have these people that are promoting this identity and defending that this is bad and this is white privilege and this is wrong. But that's exactly what the ruling class of this fucking country wants. Is a bunch of people squabbling over the fucking scraps from the table.
I love how this sign has.
And this sign doesn't make a bit of difference.
It inspired better conversation than pretty much anything in the news. So I got to give it that.
I think I found a way to say this. Look,
go ahead.
military folks, I think you know, and I think most of you would probably agree, that if there was an order given for you to fire on some fucking anarchists rioting in the fucking streets and trying to overthrow the government, most of the people in your fucking units would do it. Because that's what you're trained to do.
Fuck yeah, they're trained to do it.
So this idea that there's going to be some uprising, and now there might be some people that try and walk away from the military, but the last time I checked, even in peacetime... quote-unquote peacetime, which doesn't happen anymore.
Dude, Taylor,
you go AWOL and you're fucked.
Taylor was in the National Guard for fucking 6 years. And you can bend the rules. There's different things. But if your ass just doesn't show up one day...
You're in a world of hurt.
You're going to fucking prison, my friend. If they can find you, you're going to fucking prison. If you're in another country, there's people that went to Canada. And the U.S. fought for years in Canadian courts to have those motherfuckers sent back to the U.S. of A. And guess who won? The U.S. government. They're sending your ass back. So even if you fucking go, hey, I'm going to go to Switzerland, they'll probably send you back. As long as they say, look, you're not going to get the death penalty if you come back. You're just going to get prison. They'll say, okay, we'll extradite you. You can't, I mean, look, they own your ass. And the thing is that she was trained. And part of the training she told me about, she's like, oh, yeah, it's crowd suppression and stuff like that. I'm like, why do you need to do that? She's like, what do you think?
Well, the National Guard gets called in. They were called in during the fucking Watts riots back in the day.
Called in during Katrina, too.
Called in to quell fucking civil unrest. They're the people that have to fucking hit the ground when a city goes to shit.
I heard a story, and I don't know if it's true because it was it was one of those stories that was relayed through various parties, so who knows how much of it is true.
It's kind of hearsay is what you're saying.
Right, exactly. So take it with a massive grain of salt. But I did hear a story about some dudes trying to hold up a hospital in New Orleans.
Wow.
During Katrina, and apparently the National Guard just busted in there and basically cut the robbers in half with bullets, and basically just like devastated them where they stood.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have M16s.
So, how much of that actually happened? Did any of that actually happen? I don't know.
Fuck yeah, that kind of shit happened, dude.
It seems like it probably
Remember the
did.
Danziger
It seems
fucking
like at least
bridge?
some of that happened.
Remember that fucking bridge?
that definitely happened.
That fucking bridge, a bunch of black people were trying to escape New Orleans, and the cops like, you ain't coming this way, and then 8 people were fucking gunned down in the fucking streets.
I mean, if you want to look at it, look at the
If not more.
if you want to see actual examples of that type of, maybe not that level, maybe not cutting somebody in half with a machine gun gun level violence, but literal National Guard and American Army and Marine bullets hitting the fucking people. Just
Dude,
look in L.A. The Watts riots and the fucking late 90s Rodney King related riots.
After Katrina happened, they had this guy who was at the time a General National Guard. I think it's like Russell Honore. He had to go tell the troops. He's like, they're pointing guns at civilians. Like, I think you guys don't need to point the weapons.
That's
at
why
people.
he's got a little road out here, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly fucking why. Because he was actually like, you know what? We're trying to help these people. We're not trying to fucking. Because the military mindset is enemy, enemy. If you're not part of the group, enemy, enemy, enemy.
Well, yeah, that's what they're trained to do.
And you need that because if you get sent to a country where everyone else is shooting at you, that's what keeps you alive.
Look at the civil rights movement, and you'll see federal fucking troops and state level fucking guard troops beating the shit out of black people in the streets. I mean, that's common.
Well,
easy to find footage.
You know, usually when you hear this shit about how the army's going to be on our side, it's from the white people. You don't really hear that from the
military is going to be
the
on
black
our side.
people really don't give you that shit.
They turn that same level of violence on the protesters, the hippies, the fucking rich entitled white kids that took a little vacation and went and fucking.
Look,
I think
here's the thing.
I think
if enough
you
people,
know, good old God-fearing Christian conservative American households think that when the chips are down, the army's going to be on their side,
Right.
And I think they're going to be
sorely
disappointed.
mistaken.
if a majority of the people in the country were on that side, then of course the military would be on the side of the people. But if it's a small group, fuck no.
And I mean, you could go all the way back to the founding of this country and before it for examples of the government as it existed at the time using federal troops.
What I keep wondering
or
is
government
the
troops
Whiskey Rebellion.
Now, what I
against the fucking populace.
What
So
I keep wondering about, though, is when the government has its robot soldiers and its drones that she already has, you know, when the human element is taken out of the suppression of crowds of people, you know, like what does that become then, you know?
But here's the thing, too. With that,
There's not even a question
I don't
about
even
what
know-
the machine's loyalty is.
I don't even
fucking
know
be.
if that day comes because you know why? Because if we have like Paul talked about a digital citizenship and we have ways and means of tracking everything you do, there could be an algorithm that determines TJ's about to be a subversive. Let's go now
pre-crime.
and let's fucking get TJ. We're gonna gaffle his ass up, throw him in fucking federal prison for the next 20 years. Everyone's just gonna believe TJ was a terrorist, and it's game over.
See, I think that there are a lot of dystopias that are possible out of this, but I have to be honest with you. I go with the simplest. I think shit's just going to get real shitty here. I think that another part of the world is going to become the ascendant economy.
Probably so.
And slowly but surely, what's left of the American dream is going to be burnt in the fields and sold down the river for a fucking shekel or two. And
You're almost going like V for Vendetta, where
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. I mean, I think a third world. There are parts of America now that are akin to parts of third world countries already. I don't think that
Rural
that
America.
stops. And I think that the rich are going to flee to whatever country is going to be ascendant. Probably China, maybe Russia, maybe the both of them in some weird fucking coalition.
I
But
honestly believe that
that's
it's
the
possible
future that I see. I don't
honestly-
see a whole lot of more revolutions in medical technology here coming out of this place. I mean, we might get a few more as the carcass rots. But as far as I'm concerned, this dream has been dead for a long fucking time.
I think
social
sooner-
mobility in the U.S. is lower than many other countries
the
in Europe.
sooner
and other
we
countries.
all admit that this fucking fantasy that everything's okay ain't okay, and that this fucking cycle of I'm gonna vote for this guy because he's definitely the one, dude. All these Bernie people, I get it, dude, and I like the guy. I really fucking do. I do like Bernie Sanders. Okay. I like a lot of the things he talks about. He doesn't go as far as I want him to go, but that doesn't preclude me being supportive of him as a candidate. I think he'd be okay. I do worry about his fucking age. I'm sorry. Maybe that's wrong.
It's a valid concern.
He's an old-ass man. He could just drop dead, and any momentum that he might have...
I noticed that Paul is being way more diplomatic in the presentation of his ideas.
because you know what? I'm trying to stop what we started talking about at the top of this fucking rant.
Yeah.
I'm trying to stop being labeled by people, and I want people to know how I actually... Because there's a huge fucking thread on Reddit just talking
okay.
about Bernie and how I hate him and how I just fucking hate everything about him.
Yeah, I would say, look,
And it's
from
like, no.
From my experience with you, and I will say this, I mean, you criticize the political system. I've never heard you say, I
mean,
think
you gotta
Bernie's-
realize
Bernie's
there's-
a massive piece of shit. And I hate him.
There's a generational gap here, Paul, as well, where it's like
know.
they still believe that like they haven't been through the Obama shit like we were, where it was like,
I mean,
okay,
some of them have.
Some of them
You
have,
can't,
and
you
know
can't
what,
lay all of this on fucking millennials.
I'm not
going to
do it. But you know what? Those who didn't really go through the Obama disappointment, and I feel like those who didn't really don't remember 9/11, just like I don't think they have the same perspective, because I remember in America where there was a lot stronger of a libertarian streak in the average person.
I got to be honest with you, dude. In pre-9/11 America, people would literally puke at the idea of the government having cameras on them at all times.
Oh my God, yeah.
And electronically surveilling
the
their
amount of
phone
shit,
calls. Oh my fucking God.
The amount of shit we've accepted because of that.
You've been desensitized to
insane.
it. You've been desensitized.
I
to
haven't.
it.
It's not even a process.
Oh
of,
yes, you have. Dude, you stay
well,
on the
to a certain extent, you have.
You stay on a fucking phone all the time.
Yeah,
I know.
here you sit. You know
But
what I mean?
I hate the radiation of it, though.
But you know what, dude?
you
Here's
got no
what
choice.
scares me.
Yeah.
Because you brought this up. What was it? The last show. There's a whole generation of people born now
Totally independent.
that fucking never knew 9/11.
Right.
And they're full adults.
Yes.
And that how scary is it that it wasn't even a process of desensitization for some people.
It's just
It
unquestionably
was
the
just
way
how
things are.
it was what they
Yeah,
were fucking
that
born
was just
into.
the world they were born into.
So
And
they
that-
never
that's
knew
when
anything else.
That's when I kind of realized, like, you know, this coupled with so many of the other things that are happening is just like, this is just like end game, not the movie, but literal like game over shit. You know,
Dude, we just need.
this is
TJ,
absolutely
let's
getting
get
worse and worse.
Let's get the Infinity
I
Gauntlet.
can't think of a
Let's
decade in
let's
my
snap
life.
our fingers.
I can't think of a decade in my life that wasn't worse than the one before
You want?
it.
Hey, look,
So-
here's the reality.
Yeah.
And it's the real big problem that no one has the answer to. That's not a fucking eugenics nightmare or like I said, a Thanos. There's more and more people.
Listen.
Rapidly more and more people.
And you
Part
know
of
what?
the
We
sub-
can't.
You know
we
what's
can't
great?
support all that
Sorry,
life.
I hate to get into another fucking rant here,
Yeah, no.
but every time that I try to make, I think what is a pretty airtight case for the problem of overpopulation, the amount of pushback I get from ideas and opinions that make zero sense is insane. I've even seen it just labeled racist. Like, if you say, like, there's a problem with overpopulation, oh, so which group you want to get rid of? Like, I don't want to get rid of any group.
Right.
I want to change the way the world
across
works.
the board, let's hedge it fucking down dramatically, but
there-
you're not going to do it. And then they tell me, well, it's going to stabilize. Yeah, you know when it stabilizes?
Too
when
fucking late.
fucking people start dying because there's not enough
do you mean
resources to go
start?
around. That's when it
What do you mean start?
stabilizes.
People are already dying of hunger in places on this
Oh,
on this
sure.
planet. So
I
it's
mean,
just
that's
like,
always that's always been going
but
on.
the
Right,
reality
yeah,
is,
but-
even when you take those people into account, the net change is upward.
yes.
The net change is fucking upward.
If
You
you listen to
mentioned-
fucking E.O.
Look,
Wilson,
excuse me, the
biologist
last fucking
E.O. Wilson,
episode.
10 billion people, max carrying capacity of the planet.
TJ, remember this thing too. Remember fucking this. We talked on the last episode, and you said in America there was about it was like 1913. There was 103 million
Yeah.
people or something.
Oh, by the way, yeah,
in 100 years from now, 330 million, 340 million. It can't. People wonder why housing costs, everything's going up. There's too many people,
Yeah.
and no one has an answer. It's out of control, and humanity is not. We as a species have to manage our fucking growth in a way that's sustainable. We're not doing it at all. It's a fucking
and,
insanity.
look, dude, I really
All right,
do.
so here, listen. So the Thanos thing.
Uh-huh.
So Thanos is going to snap his finger and reduce the population by half. That's the fucking plan.
Yes.
So right now the population is about 7.5 billion. If you want to go back to when it was like half of that, you only have to go back to like the 60s and 70s. So that's nothing.
No,
I
no,
mean,
no.
like
Well,
we could be back
it's
to
because
this.
it's exponential. The more of
yeah.
us there are, the more of us there are fucking it at a
So
given moment. The
we
more
need a lot
babies
more,
there are, the
we
more.
need a lot more than a fucking 50% reduction.
Well, here's the thing. I don't even know if there's a number that you can throw out because here's why people are opposed to your idea.
Right.
And I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea. I don't know if I support it either.
Right.
I'll talk a little bit about it with you though.
Yes,
I think
go ahead.
why some people might be opposed by it is because they can't see another way of that happening without violence.
With losers,
Because it's like, okay, let me walk you through it.
Yeah.
There's a law passed saying you have to get a license. You can only have one kid, and blah 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 blah. And
It's
then
like
there's
a
a whole
chi-
generation
like a
that
Chinese
can't.
policy, like
Whatever
one
it is,
one child,
whatever it is to bring the number down to 50%. In a 50-year span or a 100-year span.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah.
Let's just say that I go, fuck you,
Yeah.
and I just fuck a chick, and then I find a chick that's
Yeah.
like fuck you,
Mm-hmm.
and I make a kid.
Yeah.
And then that kid grows up, and he was like, hey, my parents were like, fuck you, and they fuck. Like, at what point, what mechanism gets in between the dick and the pussy?
Right.
And what level of violence are you willing to accept? Because that's the only way I see it going, too.
Yeah.
I see at some point, because there are some
All right,
people
well,
on this fucking planet, believe it or not, they're
Yeah.
going to fuck, and make kids their whole fertile life cycle. They're going to do it. And the only way you're going to stop them is to kill them or forcibly abduct them and remove their sexual organs or perform surgery on them and make them sterile.
It's basic biology.
Or sterilize them at birth by population because certain ethnic groups
That's why
breed
whenever
faster than others.
Whenever I've heard Alex Jones say they're using chemtrails and shit to sterilize the population,
Right.
I'm always like, I hope you're fucking right, dude.
They're not.
I don't think they are.
No, because
But-
here's the thing. In a world where the almighty dollar is the top of the heap, and I don't think anybody argues that it is.
And you're about to make the
every
economy is
every
based on
birth
perpetual
is either a
fucking
worker
growth.
or a consumer or
Yeah.
both, ideally.
Yeah,
So
they ain't never given that up.
the more there are, the merrier, man. The more people to sell our ever cheaper, ever more planned obsolescence ruled plastic bullshit to. Why would they? Or, hey, if they're born in some shithole country, more people to make the goddamn cheap-ass planned
Exactly.
obsolescence plastic bullshit for the people to
Well,
buy.
here's
and then, hey, when it goes out of fashion, we'll really slash it and sell it back to the stupid-ass people that made it. I mean, come on.
Well, you're
the
basically talking
game
about-
is afoot.
Here lies the rub with that. Is really what you're getting at is that we have an economy that's based on expansion, and if we
Right.
suddenly have an economy that's not based on expansion,
Growth-based economy.
Endless expansion.
endless,
Year
exactly.
to year,
All right,
endless
well,
expansion.
that's the
or
goal
else.
of it. Yeah,
one of the things I thought about was instead of using negative incentives, I mean, like
Positive.
everything in psychology shows that positive incentives work better. I would think that we need to do everything we can to incentivize a childless lifestyle, including paying
luck.
including paying people to get sterilized and a massive propaganda campaign explaining how not having kids is patriotic and the good thing to do, and that people who do have kids should be looked down upon and hated.
Do you
and
have
spit
an
on and
understanding
despised.
of like, okay, because let me divert just
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to impugn my sister by bringing her up. I don't judge her lifestyle. She's got her own fucking shit to deal
Yeah.
with, and I
Yeah.
got mine. My sister's a hardcore evangelical Christian.
Yes.
Bible believing, goes to church on days that aren't Sunday multiple times.
Wow.
Basically lives out there.
Right, and it instructs them
And-
to be fruitful and all that
Right,
shit.
and has a whole bunch of kids.
Yeah.
There is no poster that you're going to come up with. They don't even watch TV, TJ. They only exclusively listen to Christian fucking sources on shit, unless it's vetted through that Christian source.
How many kids did Jesus have?
No.
Be like
that
Jesus,
argument.
you know?
no. That argument doesn't play.
Yeah.
Go forth and multiply. Go forth and be fruitful.
They ignore lots of shit in their book.
the
I'm pretty sure we can get them to ignore just one more
You're
thing.
wrong. Not without violence. I will tell you what, dude. You could offer all the tax incentives. They don't care. My sister, as long as she's able to, is going to have children. One after the other, after the other, after the other.
Yeah, I mean,
And she's not alone.
there's
It's
not-
not an ice. I'm not.
I mean,
I'm
you're
not being
gonna-
anecdotal. Paul
It's just
here.
like you're not. I mean, like, well, but look, we saw how you could turn the American populace just in your last episode. How a concerted propaganda campaign can shift public opinion. Now, obviously, you're not going to get
not a
everybody.
reduction of 50% globally.
No.
No,
That's
I don't think so.
that's a fucking pipe dream because
but
of
you
what I'm
gotta-
talking about. So the only way
You got
to
to
ensure that
you got to at least make an effort.
is like a mass sterilization campaign. I mean, that's the end result of your thinking, and that's why people oppose it.
Right.
A reduction in the population because it's never
But
happened.
even if that was a, I mean, well, it has happened.
Well, it
during
has
the Black
happened.
Death.
Yeah, the Black Death and
Yeah.
the flu epidemic,
Right.
the
So
pandemic.
there's been some pandemics.
Right, but we're talking
ultimately,
about
even if it
outside of
did-
those influences when it
But
comes
even
to
if
us
it,
deciding
even
to
if it
stop.
did come to violence or to something like that, which
Right.
hopefully it wouldn't have to. But even if it did, that would still be a better result than allowing the overpopulation problem to go
I
unchecked.
think you might overestimate the reasonability of most of the population because what you're talking about is not just a standard propaganda campaign. Those are
Right.
really useful when you're trying to convince the populace that something that's against their interests is for it.
I mean, you can make a lot of compelling arguments not to have kids. They're
Dude,
expensive.
how many
annoying,
liberals have come
you know?
along and done this? Hey, we need to have this little 1-week session where a guy comes in and talks about reproductive health, man, and then people are gonna they'll know to use. I mean, like, I'm not accusing you of that.
I mean, but you gotta. I mean, like, I'm talking about really pounding this fucking message into people's heads.
It is against the biology of the fucking human animal to not root around in a vagina and be fruitful in the loins.
You don't have to stop that.
Not all people seek it out, but enough of the population.
Shooting the fucking load is all I'm saying. You know,
good fucking luck with that.
Shoot it into a rubber or fucking get your tubes tied.
I tell you
the
what,
government will pay you for it.
Why don't we convince cats to do it first?
I mean, a lot of hard luck cases with like the rent's come due, all these problems are happening. You know, you can get that $10,000 check if you go get your tubes tied. So
people will still do it.
They're gonna, well, I think a lot of people, you know, desperate times.
Not enough to justify a 50% reduction worldwide in anything on a fucking reasonable scale. I never said
that alone would get a 50% reduction.
Yeah, what fills in the gaps of that alone is what people are worried about, because I don't really see any end game option that isn't a really rank infringement of personal liberty in my mind.
Well,
whether it's violent or not.
We're heading towards political violence either way.
The truth is that you have to, as I agree with you to some degree, you have to change the minds of people. And that's the only way you can. Who knows the exact right message to that? But you're right. At the end of it, the end result is you have way less people reproducing.
I mean, what social unrest has taken place without some violence, anyway? I
mean, violence is going to be inevitable.
We started talking about Thanos earlier, and there's an implication to Thanos that I don't hear people talk about a lot. I'm not the first one to see it, or I have seen people talk about it, but it's not really, when people talk about Thanos, they think of him in a vacuum.
Of course.
Thanos is kind of, there's a World War II drumbeat to the entirety of the Avengers movies and all of the supporting Marvel franchises. And Thanos is a representation of those great wars that have come that, you know, massive amounts of life were lost. Not just in the initial conflict, but the ensuing starvation and hunger and oppression. Uncalculable. And that's really the rich and powerful's version of what TJ's talking about. That's their answer to overpopulation, is when shit gets really bad and hits the fucking skids.
Profit off of it.
War! That's right. We'll mobilize the entire country and go kill a bunch of people and reset the clock a little bit. So if you want that to stop, then you need to come up with some magical propaganda that's going to convince people to put rubbers on. Because, I lived through the 90s, man.
Yeah.
That was the drumbeat of my life.
Yeah.
Put on a rubber. You remember all those stupid fucking songs? I'll put on a Jimmy hat. Put on a Jimmy hat. It was so fucking absurd. And you know what happened? Population kept going up, especially amongst populations of people, super fucking poor people that couldn't support them.
I think that's why we just got to incentivize actually sterilizing people so that their biology doesn't know the difference.
And there it is. And that's.
I feel like you could get people to voluntarily sterilize.
You might be able to get a minute fraction of people to go voluntarily.
I think more people would take that deal than you think.
Not enough to reduce population by 50%.
Probably not. I'll grant you that.
That would create a boom in people that were like, well, if there's a bunch of people walking away from being fruit, I better have 10 fucking kids.
I mean, we don't know that, but
think about that.
Try to compensate.
Well, we would know this. How about this too, TJ? This is an angle you haven't thought about sterilization. Is that what if you simply reproduce before you get sterilized? You still make your contribution.
At least once you're sterilized, you can't reproduce anymore. So
what if that person can potentially freeze their sperm?
What about the real problem, TJ? Let's get eugenics on this shit.
Eugenics.
What about the fact that people at the lower end of the fucking intelligence scale breed more often than people at the upper end of it? And that's really part of the problem.
I'm hoping that $10,000 incentive to get sterilized is going to be the most appealing to those people who are usually destitute. So I feel like that's sort of a passive eugenics.
Damn, TJ. And you wondered why people had opposition to this idea?
Yeah, I still do.
You know what? I think on a fucking, in a Thanos kind of way, it probably would be something that in the short term would be good for humanity. Now, I'm of the belief that
I think it's a step in the right direction.
I'm of the belief that if that happened and Thanos was like, fuck it, let's do it, boom, and 50% of people were just randomly selected and disappeared.
That's not good enough. You have to change the mentality of people, because otherwise you're going to be right back to the same place.
It'd be like rabbits.
Yeah. people are just going to fill the vacuum with more kids.
If you don't change,
Thanos' solution is stupid. You have to change the mentality of people.
If you don't change the programming,
there's no other way to do it. I mean, like, even if it's the most implausible solution possible, I don't see how there's any other viable fucking
But
solution.
let me ask you a question, TJ.
Yeah.
Wasn't part of Thanos' plan not only to just disappear 50% of all life, but to make sure that the ones that were left behind knew that he was watching, and if they got out of control again, he's coming back to snap his fucking fingers again.
Good.
So the threat of that violence is really how Thanos didn't just go like, okay, that fixed it.
Don't libertarians have a point when they point out that our taxes are collected under threat of violence? I mean,
oh, absolutely. Well, and fucking
we've already
anarcho-primitivists
accepted
and
that
shit,
to a fucking extent. So.
Dude, Derek Jensen has a point when he talks about the fact that if your rent comes due and you ain't got money to pay it, eventually a sheriff is going to come and point a gun at you and forcibly evict you from your home.
Get the fuck out of here.
The threat of violence is.
What if you're
our
hungry?
society's pretty comfortable.
What
with
if you
it,
find
honestly.
yourself hungry walking down the street one day and you ain't got no money in your pockets and you walk into a grocery store and eat a banana?
Yeah.
There's going to be a gun in your face.
Yes.
So what do you mean the threat of that's implicit in our fucking society?
I know, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, I don't think it'd be a new novel concept to most Americans.
So we need to just go that way.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, you know, if it came to that, it wouldn't be like it's the first time it's come to that.
If we're going to evolve to something more than we are now, we have to change the programming of humanity. We have to change the way that we look at the world and the way we treat resources and the way we even do anything from, like, reproduce. And you're right, Paul. There's some people who never
is probably ultimately psychological, but I don't know the recipe.
The only way that you get humanity on board with something like that is through violence, and that's why people oppose your fucking
violence is going to happen regardless. We think
but you know what, dude? There are people...
and maybe it has to be the force violence. Maybe it has to be the 10 billion people that we get. We get 10 billion people, and like you said, there's just too much shit, and people are just going to start killing each other.
Do you think?
Well, I hope not.
Do you think it's equally possible that maybe a realization that the right way is the right way without violence is even fucking possible?
No, almost certainly not.
So then, what's the point of perpetuating this stupid bullshit then? Isn't it just a misery factory at that point?
Probably.
So why?
I don't know. Blind, stupid, desperate hope.
I think that many people are just born and they live their lives. And
I don't believe it
and
has
the question
to be
of why
that way.
it doesn't have
people
to be
call me a fucking pessimist and a downer and a depressive and
I'm
shit.
telling
and
you,
I
it
am
doesn't
some
have
of
to be
that. I'm
way.
all of that, honestly.
You have to change the mentality of people, though.
But
There's
I believe
no other way to do it.
I believe that there's a better fucking way. But I do not believe that mass fucking violence has to be at the end result of it.
I feel like you've been making the opposite case,
mass
where
violence,
you're saying violence has to be a result
mass
of
violence,
the
Paul,
population
could
explosion.
potentially be the catalyst for that change.
I just don't think population control is that. I don't
Well,
think
what are
you're
you gonna
ever
do?
going to be able to sell that.
But
And it's just more
like,
fucking misery and death.
So it's going to be way worse misery and death if you let this planet reach its carrying capacity.
From what perspective?
From the perspective of
the perspective
entirety
of somebody
of the human
who's
race.
rounded up by the government troops and shot in the street, you think they would like to have a chance at the fucking dystopia where they could scrabble for food? I mean, honestly, what would you choose?
I mean, it's basically the same. You're going to die one way or the other. So I think let's actually try to avert the crisis somehow.
All right.
I think you have to take some kind of proactive measures. But no one agrees with me, so whatever.
Hail and well met, traveler. This is your official survival guide for the September 6th, 2019 Deep Fat Fried Meetup at the Howlin' Wolf in historic New Orleans, Louisiana. Remember, this meetup is 18 plus, so get your tickets below if you haven't already. As much fun as a meetup can be, there are dangers, pitfalls, and perils to be navigated. Let's take a look at Good Scotty and Bad Scotty to see how you should prepare. Good Scotty knows that no weapons of any kind are allowed at the meetup, so he leaves his vast and deadly arsenal at home. See how easily Good Scotty got into the venue? He's going to have a great time tonight. Bad Scotty, on the other hand, wanted to be cool, like the Reservoir Dogs, so he brought an airsoft pistol to the meetup to show to everyone. Unfortunately for Bad Scotty, his night is already over. He isn't allowed inside and is asked to leave entirely. He'll never know the sweet secrets of a DFF meetup. Bad move, Bad Scotty. Good Scotty knows that DFF meetups are no place for violence or harassment. Everyone in attendance is having a blast, so Good Scotty knows not to ruin the vibe. He treats people with the same respect and dignity he expects for himself. And look at what a good time he has as a result. Wow, good Scotty. Good move. Bad Scotty arrives with a chip on his shoulder. He wants attention, so he's decided to be a grade A butthole. He's obnoxious, rude, or grabby with people in ways that make them uncomfortable. Unfortunately, once again, Bad Scotty's night is over before it even begins, as security escorts him to the street and sends him on his way. Bad idea, Bad Scotty. Good Scotty knows his limits, and thus knows how to have a good time. He has drinks, he laughs, he parties, he even makes new friends. But when he starts to feel like he's had enough, Good Scotty knows when to say when. He stays the entire night, creates some awesome memories, and leaves with an amazing story to tell. He even has a designated driver or a safe ride home arranged for himself. Good thinking, Good Scotty. Bad Scotty starts pounding the booze right away, and before you know it, he's in the venue bathroom praying to the porcelain gods. He'll never know what kind of fun was had at the meetup because he drank too much, too fast. Trust us when we say the bathroom floor is the least amusing place in the Howling Wolf, and it's the only thing Bad Scotty will see all night. He didn't even secure himself a safe ride home, so now Bad Scotty is everyone else's problem. He won't remember a thing tomorrow. Bad form, Bad Scotty. So as you can see, Good Scotty has a great time, and Bad Scotty, well, he has no kind of time at all. Be like Good Scotty, and you'll not only survive the DFF New Orleans meetup, but you'll thrive at the meetup and lead with a great story. Be like Bad Scotty and, well, you'll just be asked to leave. Now you're prepared for anything. Get your tickets below. The time of your life awaits. See you at the Howlin' Wolf in New Orleans, Louisiana on September 6th. Good Scotty